Imagine drifting at sea for 3 endless days and 3 endless nights after a terrible plane crash, with nothing but the sound of the waves and the fading hope of survival. That's exactly where our story begins. A lone man, weak and desperate, clung to life as his small ladder boat floated across the open water. Just as he was about to give up, his eyes caught sight of land on the horizon. Hope surged through his veins. With every ounce of strength left in him, he guided his boat to the shore. Barefoot and exhausted, he stepped onto the beach and cautiously made his way into the dense woods, calling out for any sign of life. But the forest remained silent. No one answered his cries. The only reply was the relentless crash of the waves against the shore. Alone and without rescue, he dragged his feet back to the beach and began to draw a large distress signal in the sand, hoping that a passing plane might spot it from above. As night fell, he built a rough, makeshift shelter out of branches and debris. Completely drained, he planned to make better arrangements the next day. But just as he lay down, an eerie sound echoed from the dark woods. His heart raced. Fear shot through him like lightning. He immediately sat up, alert and terrified, and in panic decided not to risk staying there. When dawn arrived, he looked back at the beach only to realize that the signal he had carved into the sand had been mostly erased by the waves overnight. Frustrated, he tried again, determined to write a bigger, clearer distress message. At that very moment, the ocean brought him an unexpected gift. Several express parcels floated onto the beach. He rushed to collect them, thinking they might prove useful in his survival. Just as he gathered them, the strange sound from the woods returned. His heart pounded. He froze and then shouted loudly, trying to scare off whatever was there. Suddenly, he realized the noise wasn't some dangerous animal at all. It was just coconuts falling from the trees. Relief washed over him. He laughed nervously at himself and quickly collected the coconuts, realizing how lucky he was. He hadn't had a drop of water in an entire day. Desperate for hydration, he smashed one of the coconuts against a rock. The hard shell cracked, and he hurried to taste the sweet water inside. For the first time since the crash, he felt life returning to his body. Refreshed, he packed his belongings, grabbed his stick for protection, and ventured out again, hoping to find any trace of human life nearby. From morning until afternoon, he searched around the cliffs and reefs, but all he found was another drifting parcel. No people, no rescue. Finally, exhausted and discouraged, he found himself right back at the starting point on the beach. Not ready to give up, he decided to climb the tall cliffs to see whether this really was an uninhabited island. But as he climbed over the sharp coral, his feet were cut and began bleeding heavily. Gritting his teeth, he tore off part of his pants and used a stone knife to cut strips of fabric. He tied them around his injured feet, fashioning crude shoes. Then, remembering what little he knew about survival, and add extra protection. Slowly, painfully, he made his way upward. After an exhausting climb, he reached the top and looked out. His heart sank. All around him, as far as the eye could see, was nothing but coral reefs and open water. Then, suddenly, he spotted something unusual floating not far from shore. With a burst of hope, he raced down the cliff and swam toward it with the speed of a desperate man. To his shock, it was the captain of his plane. But the hope quickly turned into sorrow. The captain had no signs of life. With tears in his eyes, he dragged the lifeless body back to the beach. Searching the pockets, he found a wallet with a family photo inside. The sight of that happy family broke him. The captain's loved ones would never see him again. The man carefully buried the captain in the sand, gently placing the family photo beside him. Although he was alone, he found a small measure of comfort in the photo of his own fiancée that he had managed to keep. At least in the darkest times, he could remind himself of love. Days passed. Rescue never came. But slowly, the man began adapting to his harsh environment. Every morning, he drank dew collected from leaves, carefully storing precious drops of fresh water in hollowed coconut shells. He tried his luck at fishing, but the sea refused to reward him. For hours he would cast makeshift lines or chase shadows in the water, only to return empty-handed. One sleepless night, while wandering the beach, he suddenly spotted a light in the distance. His heart raced. It was clearly a ship. Waving frantically, he grabbed his flashlight and flashed it toward the vessel again and again, praying someone would see him. But his tiny light was nothing against the vast ocean. The ship kept moving, unaware of his desperate signals. Fueled by determination, he decided to pursue it. He grabbed his small dinghy, tied an elastic band from his pants around his head to protect himself from the blazing sun, and set out with his fiancée's photo and his flashlight, paddling with everything he had. But the sea is merciless. By noon, after hours of effort, he realized he had moved less than 100 meters. Waves crashed against him. Still, he refused to give up. Then, a massive wave struck, capsizing his boat and smashing his face against the debris. Bleeding and crying out in agony, he had no choice but to limp back to shore, dragging his burse. A sudden storm erupted. Rain poured down in sheets. Weak and injured, he used his ladder boat to shield the precious parcels from the downpour. With no other shelter, he stumbled into a cave at the base of the mountain. Inside, he discovered a small spring of fresh water. Thirsty beyond belief, he plunged his face into it, drinking until he passed out from exhaustion, leaving his flashlight on until it died. When he woke, his wound was infected and throbbing with pain. Survival was slipping away, and he knew it. Out of desperation, he finally opened the parcels he had collected from the sea. The first one contained a pair of ice skates. The sharp blades gave him an idea they could be tools. The second box revealed nothing but a volleyball. At first, it seemed useless. Another package held videotapes and a paper contract. Disappointing, but when he opened the last one, he froze. On the cover was a symbol of angel wings. He didn't open it yet, keeping it as a symbol of hope. From then on, he made use of everything he had. He flattened the cardboard boxes into a bed. He used the skate blades to cut wood and even fashioned crude bandages from shoelaces. With them, he managed to clean his wound and catch fish. Once, he even caught a large crab, only to discover its insides were nothing but mud. Eating it raw would have meant certain death. He tried other strategies, using coconut fibers and skirts of plants to weave nets. Eventually, he caught a small fish. He chewed the raw flesh desperately, but it wasn't enough. He realized he needed fire. Like ancient humans, he tried to rub wood together with scraps of paper as tinder. Hours passed. No spark. He nearly broke down. But survival demands patience. With time, he found a method that worked. Sparks finally appeared, glowing embers in the wood. For the first time, fire lit up the night. He built the tooth ripped free, and the agony made him faint instantly. Yet somehow he survived. Days turned into months, months into years. For long years crawled by. His once heavy, bloated frame wasted away into skin and bone. He lived like a shadow of himself, a man barely alive, haunted by loneliness. To keep his sanity, he befriended the volleyball, drawing a face on it with his bloody handprint. He named it Wilson. Every day, he spoke to Wilson, sharing his feelings, laughing, crying, venting his rage. Wilson became his companion, his friend, his reason not to lose hope completely. He even drew images of his fiancée on the cave walls, promising himself he would see her again one day. Then, one day, fate changed. While fishing, he discovered a large sheet of metal washed ashore, a green iron plate unlike anything he had seen there before. His mind sparked with an idea. With this as a sail, he could finally escape the island. He chopped trees, dried the wood, twisted bark into ropes. He worked day and night, starving himself to save energy for building. Every step was grueling, but he didn't stop. At last, a crude but strong raft was complete. His heart pounded. This was his chance. But leaving the island meant leaving Wilson behind. After an argument with his silent companion, he angrily threw Wilson out of the cave. But regret hit him instantly. He rushed out into the night and carefully repaired Wilson's face, apologizing. In truth, Wilson had become his only friend in the world. When the raft was ready, he pushed it into the ocean and began his daring journey. Waves battered him. Sun scorched him. At one point, Wilson was ripped from the raft and drifted away. The man screamed, diving into the water, swimming with all his might to save his only friend. But nature was cruel. He couldn't reach Wilson. Tears streamed down his face as Wilson disappeared into the horizon. Heartbroken, he collapsed on the raft, ready to surrender to the sea. Days later, delirious and weak, he heard a sound that seemed like a dream, the hum of an engine. A ship. Against all odds, he was finally rescued. But survival had a price. When he returned to civilization, he discovered the world had moved on. The fiancée he had clung to for 4 years had already married and started a family. Everything he had dreamed of, everything that kept him alive, was gone. The man was alive, but he was not. His survival story was both a triumph and a tragedy, proof that time can change everything. And that's the incredible journey of one man against the power of nature. From the edge of death to the fight for hope, his story reminds us how fragile life is and how much strength we truly have when survival is the only option.